Alright, so welcome to this lesson where we're going to carry on from where we last left off. And the first thing I want to talk about is the perspective, because at the moment the perspective is all wrong. Basically our cube is going off the left hand side of our page and we can see two faces at once, and I only want to be able to see one face at a time. So what is actually happening here? Well, let's take a look at our viewport. So what I'm going to do is take a look at the div with the ID of viewport, take a look at that DOM element, and right there you'll be able to see it has a width of 1264 pixels, which is the entire width of the browser, and 0 pixels in height. Now the height I'm not fussed with at the moment, but why are we getting this right here, this weird angle? Well, the reason is because what you have is basically you moving over to the left, like so. And that's what's happening because the entire width of the viewport is the entire width of the browser, which is 1260 odd pixels. So that is why we're getting that angle right there. But we don't want that. We want the viewport to be dead center. And to do that, what we need to do is move back over again and get that dead on. So how are we actually going to do that? Well, what you need to do is first of all control the width and the height of the viewport. That way it's not just going to go all the way to the width of the browser and 0 pixels in height. And the reason why you can still see assets that are in the viewport that are bigger than obviously 0 pixels is because you have the overflow set to visible by default. But if I was to say overflow hidden and go ahead and save that, you'll be able to see that you wouldn't be able to see anything because you have no height to it. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is set the width and the height to 200 pixels, just like so. And then what I can do is go back and just hit refresh. And there we go. Now you can see that the viewport is 200 by 200 pixels and it's dead center. So that is why our viewport is very important, and also taking into consideration the size and so forth. Now I actually want to move my viewport into the correct position. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say position absolute, and you might want to actually apply these sort of styles to normal DOM elements. A little trick right here is what we're going to do is we're going to center this. So what we're going to do is say top 50%, and then we're going to say left 50%, and then what we're going to do is say margin, and first of all we have the top margin, which I'm going to make it negative 100 pixels, which is half the height of the viewport and also the cube and the cube faces as well. Then we have right, which I'm going to set to 0, then we have bottom, which is going to be 0, and then we have the left margin, which is negative 100 pixels, just like so. And that's a little trick right there that you can actually apply, and you'll notice that this stays dead center, which is really cool. Alright, so once I've gone ahead and done that, the next thing I want to do is actually take a look at the cube. So let's go ahead and rotate the cube. So I'm going to right click, hit inspect, and we're going to select the cube and scroll down right here. And here you'll be able to see rotate X. When I start rotating this, you'll notice that we're getting this really weird effect. And basically what I want to do is sort of rotate to one face and then rotate to another face, and it be in exactly the same position. At the moment you can see that this is sort of moving around. So when we're on the front face, that's absolutely fine, but then when we go to the top face right here, you'll be able to see it just sort of goes all strange and sort of moves upwards, which is something we definitely don't want. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is actually take a look at the width and the height of the cube, because even though the width is 200 pixels, as you can see right there, you also have a height of 0 pixels. So what's happening is you're sort of getting the point of origin for the transformation right here, because as you know it's dead center, but because the height is 0 pixels, you're sort of getting the point of origin right here. So it's sort of messing around with our transformations. So we want to change that origin so it's dead center to the actual cube element that we have right here. So what we need to do is again set the width and the height, but of course the width is already set, so we don't really need to do that, but I'm going to set it anyway. So I'm going to say width 100%. The reason why I'm going to do that is because, as you know, each face is 200 by 200 pixels, but my viewport is now 200 by 200 pixels. So with each face, I'm going to make that 100% by 100%. That way it can scale up. If I make this viewport bigger, it's going to make the cube bigger, which is going to be a lot better for us and a lot easier to maintain this code. And the same for the cube object itself. So the width and the height is 100 by 100%, which is 200 by 200 pixels, and each of the faces is 100 by 100%, which is 200 by 200 pixels, because that's what the cube is as well. So as you can see, this is now going to be easily scalable. But however, you will need to change your transformation values as well if you do scale this up. But however, it makes the code a little bit more easier to maintain. And so when I say rotate X now, you'll notice this stays dead center when I rotate. Or if I rotate on the Y-axis to another face, what I can do is go ahead and rotate on the Y-axis, and you'll notice that this stays exactly where I want it to. So as you can see, if I go into Blender right here, when I select all these faces, it knows that this is the dead center, and I can rotate this on the Z-axis and it knows that that's the dead center. And that's effectively what we're doing here in the browser, is just making sure we're setting the volume of the actual object so that it has the correct point of origin for the transformations. So once I've gone ahead and done that, the next thing that I actually want to take a look at is adding content to our faces. So let's go ahead and scroll down, and what I want to do for each one of these faces is add a header 1 element that just says text. So once I've gone ahead and done that, what I can do is save this and preview it inside of Safari, and there we have the text. Now what I want to do is I want to take off the opacity for the faces. And that way this makes it a little bit easier to see. Now what I want to do is target the cube, and I want to rotate it first of all on the Y-axis. So let's go over to the left hand side. So I'm going to say rotate 90 degrees, and right there you'll be able to see that the text is backwards. So that's kind of strange. Let's take a look at the front face again. So the front face looks okay, but then let's go to the right hand side. Well, the right hand side, the text looks okay. So what's going off here? And if we keep going around and we go to the back face, you'll notice that again the text is the wrong way around. So this is very, very strange. And if we go on the X-axis, you'll be able to see that the bottom face doesn't look right, but the top face does. So this is looking very, very strange. Why is this happening? Well, let's take a look at the front face first of all, and I'm going to go into Blender, and I'm going to go to View, and then obviously Top View. So this is how it looks inside of the browser, and again I'm going to change the axes right here to local. And what I want to do is select the top face, or the front face in our case. So I'm going to go to View and then Top. And so you'll be able to see that the blue arrow right here is pointing towards us. So as we're looking at it, it's pointing towards us. Now, when I go to the right hand side, which is this side right here, and click on that, you'll notice that again, when we go round, this blue arrow is pointing outwards, meaning it's pointing towards us. So this is the normal side of the face. However, when I go over to the left hand side, which is this side right here, don't forget, the blue arrow is pointing inwards. Now this is going to cause a problem. Now think of the normal side of the face as essentially a pane of glass. When you put something on a pane of glass, you sort of have to put it in reverse in order for it to be seen correctly. If you don't, if you just put it the normal way, then what's going to happen is you're going to get the text reversed. Now that's okay for some sides, such as the right hand side, because we've rotated this 90 degrees on the Y-axis. So the normal side of the face is pointing outwards, this blue arrow right here. But the left hand side is no good because this is pointing inwards. Think of that as the building, and it's pointing inwards into the building. We want it pointing outwards, showing out of the shop window. So how do we do that? Well, instead of rotating on the y-axis 90 degrees, we can say minus 90 degrees. And when you do that, the normal side of the face is pointing outwards, meaning it's pointing at us. And that's for the left-hand side. Obviously, you have then the top and the bottom. So that is the top face, that is the bottom, and then obviously we have the back face right there, which is parallel to the front face right here. So that's effectively what's happening. We want it pointing outwards. So any face that has that arrow pointing outwards is absolutely fine, but any other face with the arrow pointing inwards into the object, then it's going to look wrong, and that's what's happening. So we need to actually change some of our transformation values in order to get this text to look correct. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is right here with the left hand side, let's start with that. Instead of saying rotate Y 90 degrees, as you saw, I'm going to change that to minus 90 degrees. And then what I can do is just take a look at that in Safari, hit refresh, and with the cube, we're going to say rotate on the y-axis, and we want to rotate 90 degrees, and there you go. It's now working perfectly. And you can see what this is doing when we actually select this right here. Let's select the left face, and in here what we're going to do is change the rotation. So this is a great way for you to actually learn and understand what's happening here, is actually editing this in the browser. And so what I'm going to do is, as you can see, this is what's happening. So when I said 90 degrees, it's the wrong way around, but when I said minus 90 degrees, it flipped it so that we have the normal side facing towards us. That's the most important thing. Then we have the back face. The back looks wrong, and that's because, again, if you think of this like a pane of glass, this text is facing inwards. It's pointing into the cube, into the object, not outwards at us, so we can't see it properly. So what I'm going to do is open up Blender and just take a look at this now. So we have the front face, and then we have the back face, which is parallel. And so as you can see, with the back face, it's pointing into the cube. So what I want to do is effectively rotate it on the y-axis. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is say rotate on the y-axis by 180 degrees. So you're effectively flipping this over. So if I actually set that 180, you'll be able to see now that that arrow is pointing outwards, meaning it's going to be facing the camera, and therefore we're going to get the correct side, or the normal side. So I'm just going to go ahead, and inside of here with the back face, I'm just going to say rotate on the y-axis negative 180 degrees, or I could say 180 degrees. Doesn't really matter whether it's negative or positive here, because it's 180. So when I go ahead and click on the cube and I rotate on the y-axis, and we're going to rotate all the way around, and there we go. The back face now looks correct. So we're going to go back to the front, and we're going to take a look at the x-axis right now. So when I go up, you'll be able to see top face looks fine, but the bottom face doesn't. So all I have to do, again, to get this facing the right way, is with the bottom, instead of saying rotate 90 degrees, I say negative 90 degrees. And then I go back, hit refresh, and then we can click on the cube, and we can just rotate to the bottom face, and there we go. So the text looks okay. Now, this isn't perfect, because in some circumstances, this isn't going to work right. So, for example, if we were to go to the top face, that looks fine, but that was from the front face. Then we go to the back face, and again, that doesn't look right, but then the bottom face looks right again, but the front face also looks right. So it really depends on how you're going to animate this. Now, if you had a load of images and so forth, so if you put an image element in here, or a background image instead of a solid background color, what will happen is basically your images may get inverted. But with images, it's kind of difficult to tell, so that's absolutely fine. However, in some cases, obviously with text and stuff that needs to be legible, then that can change the game completely. but it can also cause problem with images, videos, or other type of elements that are embedded in these faces. So it really depends on how you're actually going to animate it and how you're actually going to go from one face to the other. Is it just going to be completely random? Because then it could be very, very difficult to program. But if it's very procedural, then you can go around all the faces of the cube and you can do it in stages so that you can control the animation rather than there being just something completely random. So this is all about playing around with it, changing the rotations, take a look at the faces, rotate the faces individually in the browser, and this is going to help you so much using these tools that come with the browser, whether it be Safari or Google Chrome has a great inspector, and you can also get a plugin for Firefox called Firebug that again allows you to inspect DOM elements, change the CSS on the fly, and also don't forget about Blender. That can also help you understand a bit more about what you're doing in the 3D environment. And finally, just before you go, what I want to do is say that with these transform CSS properties right here, you need to basically have the mos prefix on there, and then obviously the non-prefixed version as well. And go ahead and repeat the process for all of the other transform CSS properties. So I have gone ahead and done that, as you can see, and nothing has changed. It's all still working exactly as I have programmed it. So thanks for watching this lesson, and I hope you can join me in the next lesson where we're going to take a look at animating our CSS 3D cube. So, thanks for watching.